Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. Now, if you just joined us, we was talking about Joe Biden, and he released his Black Agenda yesterday.
Lift every
His
voice.
Lift Every Voice, yes, Plan for Black America.
All right, and we were asking 800-585-1051, what would you ask for Joe Biden? I said what I've heard so far seems like more of a blanket statement. But we would ask, what would you ask? I mean, some of the things that he said, in my opinion, just seem like, yes, we need to, help the school system in low poverty areas. We need better education. We need more money for real. It just seemed like a blanket statement. That's me, but I haven't gone through everything.
But that is true. We do need that.
But
we needed that for years. But how do we get it
done?
done? Exactly.
Yeah, but when you promise black folks that they will rise via black capitalism through small business, education, and home ownership, you just got to understand that's not all of our reality. Like the U.S. is not driven through small business economy, and we exaggerate the return on investment on education. And home ownership is not the only pathway to wealth. So it's solid for those who already have a little something, but I still think, he's missing out on directly implementing things that will impact black communities immediately. That's why. Would you like to start? Would you want to start with what we would do?
Well, I want to say a couple of things about that because I do feel like small business ownership is a big deal for our community, especially for African-American women. And there's been a lot of research that shows that Black women are the ones that are opening businesses at a way greater rate than any other group of people, right? And that's been going on for a couple of years now, but we get the least amount of capital to open those businesses. So I do think that that is important. While some businesses might get over $100,000, Black women get about $20,000 for every $100,000 that another business might get. So I do think we are, as Black women, opening up these businesses, these small businesses, but not getting the access to the same capital. So that's important to me in particular, and to a lot of Black women I know. Also, when it comes to education, I always feel like education is the base of everything, just to make sure that there's after school programs, make sure that there's no disparity in the education system. And so that is something that definitely for centuries has had to be worked on. So I think, what are the solid plans to be able to do that? So those are some of the things that I feel are important. And as far as home ownership, it's not really necessarily just about wealth, because wealth isn't as important to everybody's. Not like I need to be wealthy, but it is about being confident and comfortable. And I know that people feel a lot more comfortable. I know before I owned a home, I was very nervous about how am I going to ever be able to retire comfortably? How can I feel comfortable knowing that, okay, I'm 65 years old now. I don't want to have to work for the rest of my life to pay rent somewhere. So I do feel like home ownership is important. Being able to pass down a house to your next generation is important so that you can actually have a foot up on everybody else and not have to worry about those things. So those are things that we do need to see some solid plans.
Yeah, you're right on a lot of those points, and it's good that if people if they want to expand Black home ownership and wealth building, that's great. But you just got to remember, you can't small business home ownership your way out of poverty because most folks don't have the capital for any of that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that would be one of my things, right? Like, even though home ownership is not the only way to build wealth, I would like to see more generational wealth created through home ownership, but you got to provide down payment assistance. You got to get Black folks banked and recognized by credit scoring companies. You got to enforce fair lending laws. You got to reduce foreclosures and evictions, and you got to increase the supply of affordable housing, right? Envy, you in the real estate game. You provide a lot of affordable housing for people, right?
Absolutely.
That's what you got to do. And also, I'm going to tell you what I would want to do. I would want a lot of money. I'm talking about hundreds of billions of dollars invested in hoods all across America. And that would go to improvements, public schools, hospitals, and housing, because environment to me automatically improves kids' mental and emotional health and gives them something positive to do. And I love the idea of a universal basic income, because when I see Joe Biden has a $900 million 8-year grant program to fight gun violence, I'm like, bruh, just find a way to put that money into the hands of the people, create opportunities for them. That's how you'll reduce gun violence.
Right.
Me, that's what I think personally.
Well, see, for myself, I would definitely standard policy as far as lending, meaning it doesn't matter what your background is, what you do. If your credit score is a certain amount of money and you can prove that you make this amount of money, you should be able to get lending. You should be able to get loans. A lot of times they don't allow us to get these loans depending on when we live. We need to cut that out immediately. That should have been cut out a long time ago. Also, taxing. They tax a lot of people I don't feel like should be taxed as high. And when I say that, I mean, if you're a first-time person in your family that's really making money, right? And I guess you could call it legacy. If you're a legacy person, your family's been making millions for a long time, so that money stays in your family. And like you said, you could pass down that wealth, you could pass down that house. But if you're a first time person that's just starting to make money, and not a millionaire, it don't even have to be a millionaire, it could be a couple 100,000 years. You shouldn't be taxed like the next person be taxed, because how can I possibly create generational wealth if you tax me just like
That's
you taxing
right.
a man that's been making $20 million a year for all of his life? I'll
Give
never
me a
catch
break.
up. We're
That's
so far
right.
behind. You have to give our community a break. And
Y'all owe us reparations.
when it
The
comes
least
to
y'all can do is give us
education,
tax cuts.
we need to make it easier for us to get money. There's so many people that hit me and so many students that can't go to school because of $1,000, or can't go to school because of $2,000, or can't go to school because $700, because they can't get that money. And I love what you said about small businesses, but the problem with small businesses, we need to create some type of committee or some type of I don't know, I don't even know what you would call it, but yes,
So
you're
people
right.
can get the capital
Lend the
to
money.
open these businesses.
That's great, but
Yeah.
that's not the problem. The problem is we have to teach. We need somebody there to
Yes.
say, I'm gonna help you and show you how to do it. Everything that
Right.
I've done in real estate,
But
nobody taught me. I had to teach myself. Everything when it came to business, I didn't know. I had to teach
Very
myself,
true.
and I got bumps and bruises. There was nobody to be like, hey, my dad didn't know. So he didn't say, hey, son,
Very
this is
good
how you
point.
do it. We have to be able to, yeah, giving the money is great, but you just can't give somebody
Very good
$100,000 and
point.
say, go. You got to say, okay, here's $100,000. Let me show you how to do a business plan. Let me show you
Very
how to
good
that's
point.
create this business.
and that's
And
why
if,
I'm
and if
very
you're
in
not,
support
we don't.
of funding the Small Business Administration, just because I've worked with them here in New York, and they have free classes. You pay for that with your tax dollars. And I learned how to do a lot of things that I learned how to do by having access to that. And they did this whole Black entrepreneurship campaign last year. And we do need to expand that, because it also teaches you how to get contracts with the federal government. And that's how a lot of companies have gotten wealthy, because these small companies have managed to get these contracts from the government, and then they've grown into hundreds of millions of dollars worth of money. And these are things I didn't know about until I started taking these free courses. And so people need to know about these courses, have access to them, because they do teach you how to do everything that you need to do to start a business. So
Well,
if you're a small business owner,
Oh,
I think it is
yeah.
important to know you have access to that.
What you say?
And just to build on what you said about school, Envy, that's another thing I would implement. I would implement some type of free trade school, right? Has to be something for folks who don't want to go to traditional college. And when you learn a trade, when you learn to do something with your hands, you can immediately start making money. But also you can start rebuilding your own hoods immediately. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that should be in prisons, making prisons actual correctional facilities, and giving them a skill they can actually use to make money when they come home.
Well, when we come back, we'll take some calls, 800-585-1051. And shout out to Mayor Ross Barack, right? I was talking to him the other day, and what he wants to do is get a lot of these minority business owners to make the city have to buy from them. Like, like the city has so many different schools and buildings that use toilet paper. They should be buying from a Black person that makes toilet paper. Like, have these businesses where they know they will be straight for the rest of their life. Not just say, okay, we're going to give it to this company and this company makes millions of dollars. No, give it to the people that are in the community. If there's somebody in Newark that makes toilet paper, we have to buy it from them. If there's somebody in the community that makes paper for schools, we have to buy it from them. We have to keep that money in our community, circulating in our community. All right.
And that's why I'm talking about getting contracts with the government. That's exactly why that's important.
We're asking, what would you ask Joe Biden for? All right. Now, Joe Biden released his Lift Every Voice.
I hate that title, by the way.
Plan for Black America.
The plan for his
title.
Black agenda.
You might as well call it lift. You might as well call it Lift Every Slave Ship. Like, Jesus Christ, Lift Every Voice. Come on, bro.
Well, it could have been I Have a Dream. I mean, it was either or.
It could have been I Have a Dream.
It was either or.
I have a dream for you, Negroes.
Let's go to the phone lines. Hello, who's this?
God. Hey, this is Walt.
Walt, what's going on, brother?
Hey, Bray, what's going on? Good morning, everybody. I just want to say I
Good
love y'all. And I
morning.
thank you. I thank you, Angela Yee, and thank you for having me. Real quick, I just want to say two things and get up out your way.
Go ahead, brother.
The two things that I would like to see from Biden is, and it basically involves specificity on how he's going to invest $900 million over the next 8 years in stopping gun violence. I mean,
Yes.
like, honestly, it's like something I would like to see is, and I studied this, like I went to school and I actually studied criminology, and I actually been to prison myself. So my thing is, if you're going to talk about stopping gun violence, the only thing that has been proven to drop crime all across the board is by creating opportunity. Police don't
Yes,
stop
more
crime.
jobs.
Prisons don't stop crime. None of that stuff stops crime. So an idea that I think would be great in that $900 million investment is expanded after-school programs from kindergarten all the way to high school that are specifically focused on things that
I love that.
help out life skills. Like teach kids how to be barbers, cosmetologists, audio engineers. Like whatever the case may be, but specifically targeted at schools that have overwhelming minority populations and poor students. So that's one thing I would like to see, targeted after-school programs. The second thing is, if you're going to talk about mass incarceration, a big driver of that is technical parole and probation violations. That thing has to be completely wiped out, and parole and probation should not get in the way of you having a job or being able to do things. Like, what sense does it make if you got to see a parole officer 2 times a week at 12 noon, but you got to have a job?
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Go.
Okay,
Thank you,
I
brother,
like
for
those
calling in.
plans. Thank you.
Hello, who's this?
Hey, this Lee from Augusta, Georgia.
Hey, Lee, what's going on? If we're talking about if you could ask Joe Biden for something, what would you ask him for?
I'd ask Joe Biden that if you're a felon and you haven't been in trouble in 10 years, you should be able to get your record expunged.
Depending on the crime, though. I agree with you. Depending on the crime. Absolutely. I agree with you. But if you're a pedophile, you got to stay on your record.
Yeah, but those drug charges, stuff like that.
Drug
that
charges
can
and
go.
stuff like that can go. But if you're a pedophile,
and your behavior after that.
Yeah, if you're a pedophile.
I'm sorry, non-violent, non-pedophile. I'm
There you
sorry.
go.
Okay, non-violent, non-sexual.
I mean, some non-violent as well. I mean, the first charge I ever had was assault and battery with intent to kill. All I was doing was sitting in the back seat minding my business while my guy was bucking off. You know what I'm saying? It's been 20 years. Can I get that off my record? Jesus.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I said certain. It depends on what you did. But 800-585-1051, we're asking, what would you ask for Joe Biden? And you know what? One thing that I thought was very, very important for me growing up, I'm from Jamaica, Queens, was after school programs. There was so many different things I can do as a kid after school, whether it was baseball, whether it was basketball, whether it was football, whether it was all these different things. And times has changed. Kids are making millions off of video games. They're making millions off of coding. They're making millions off of all these different things. We have to start implementing these things in these schools and making it fun for the communities, and not just the schools, but community leaders. Like when I had these things, I didn't go to no community school. It was they gave money to the community leaders. Like my dad was a coach for basketball. Mr. Jones was a coach for something else. This one, it was the money stayed in the community and everybody was involved.
That's why I said I want $100 billion investment in the hoods all across America. Like the talking about home ownership, the small businesses, all of that is great. But I'm just talking about for the regular everyday person who don't have the capital for that. Let's take hundreds of billions of dollars and invest them in hoods all across America that go to the public schools, that go to the after school programs, that go to make the hospitals better, that go to make the housing better. Like that just builds up the community.
800-585-1051. Hello, who's this?
Good morning. This is Chanel.
Hey, Chanel, where you calling from?
I'm calling from uptown, and I just don't believe in the federal government.
Talk
I
to
really
me.
don't. I just feel like, first of all, I agree with Charlamagne more. I'm feeling you, Yee, but we have gentrification, so buying property is I make a good salary. So buying property is hard when you have gentrification. I want to know how come they build in uptown but not build it in the trailer parks. So we need to stop that. Okay. My kids go to school on the Upper West Side, and I was picking them up from school one day. I was eavesdropping on these little white kids. They were talking about politics, repeating what their parents were saying. They don't give a damn about what's going on in our community. They're just looking what's going on. They're looking how to stay in power. They're not trying to fix what's going on in our community, because the reality is it's not their reality.
Right.
It's hard to open up small businesses because of gentrification. I'm in my 30s, and being born in the 80s, you heard go to school, get an education, get a good job, say no to drugs, did that. But yet none of my peers are able to reach that because times have changed. We don't run off of small mom and pop shops anymore.
Nope.
So what does it really do? And I don't have faith in the federal government. I do have faith in our local government, but the reality is it's not their reality. It's not their problem, and it's a lot of hearsay.
You're right, and you know what? And what you said was perfect, spot on. Like even like a time like this, right? with the coronavirus. It's hurting our community. It's hurting everybody, but not. I wouldn't say everybody. There's a lot of people out there, like you said, gentrification right now that are coming up, and I'm gonna tell you why. Right? So
a lot of people that's gonna be rich after
I
this.
still buy properties, right? And before, when I was buying properties, I would have to battle against somebody. Now there is no battle. Cash is king. You can go buy all these properties, might have had a value of $1 million. People are picking them up for 500,000, 600,000. Of course, the value is going to shoot back up. And when it does, those people will be rich. Those people will have even more money. Even talk about the stock market. Some of these stocks were going for $80, $90, dropped to $10. People were just buying ish loads of stock. And when this is over and them airline stocks go back up and Disney goes back up and Boeing goes back up and all these stocks go back up, who's gonna have the money? Because our community could barely afford to buy toilet paper.
I will say though, Warren Buffett let go of all his U.S. airline stock yesterday though. Just want to throw that out there.
I'm an educator. I teach in a high needs district. When my kids started going to school, my son is about to be 13 next month. So back, when he was in kindergarten, I had to choose a school, and I live borderline, Upper West Side, Harlem. I had to decide, do I want to send my child to a school in Harlem, knowing the disparities that those type of districts face, or do I want to send him to a better district where he's not going to see people like him, unfortunately. And I had to choose his education because just working in the education system and seeing what's going on, the fact that high schools are now broken down and smaller schools, like we're New York City. We are not, when you compare, you cannot compare it to any other city. And that's why I say we can't always look at the federal. We got to look at the local. And we shouldn't have small schools in New York City. It's hurting the kids. And the parents don't know that. The money that they pump into, administration at schools, if a principal is making $200-something thousand, one principal, and you have 4 principals in a school, that's already $1 million already. That's a waste.
Wow.
So
Thank you for calling.
Thank you for calling, man. We really appreciate it. And good luck with everything out there, too.
Yes. And I do want to say that I also think things can be done simultaneously. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I do think the education is very important. That is one of the most important things and the foundation of everything. But at the same time, I do feel like we do need plans for small businesses, and we do need plans to make sure people can become first-time homeowners, and all of those things can happen at the same time. And we do need plans to make sure that the police brutality is, non-existent in our community. And we do need plans to make sure that if you are going to prevent people from going to jail, just to start with, forget and also reform, but let's just make sure people don't go to jail.
It's all a work in progress. I'm glad that Biden put this on the table. It's a negotiation, though. We have a long way to go. But, you just got to remember, you can't small business home ownership your way out of poverty because most folks don't have the capital for either or. So stuff like this is good for folks who have a little something, but promising just every Black person that they will rise via Black capitalism through small businesses, education, and home ownership, that's just simply not all of our reality. So it's solid for those of us who already have a little something, but I still think he's missing out on directly implementing things that will impact Black communities immediately.
Right. And I just want to say last thing, when you talk about education, a lot of the talks about education is BS. All right. Bullish. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the curriculum hasn't changed. You're teaching kids about pie. When is the last time you used pie, Charlamagne?
I want some pie right now, but I'm on a diet.
Exactly.
I can't wait to give me some sweet potato pie.
We got to teach these kids how to be entrepreneurs and not be worker bees. That's what we have to start doing, man.
We exaggerate the return on investment in regards to education a lot.
Got to change the
let's just be real.
And that's why I feel like, yes, education is the foundation. But like you said, teach these kids to be entrepreneurs. At the same time, you also have to make sure you invest in people who are trying to start businesses.
But I also think that when we talk about education, we talk about education from the standpoint of schooling, right? Education is what you're talking about, Envy, like going to learn about real estate. Going
stock
to learn about how to invest, the stock market. You know what I mean? Yeah, learn coding. Like it's different ways to get an education. That's why I think trade school is important. Trade school is education. Learn how to do something with your hands. You can immediately get out there in the workforce and make money, and you can rebuild your own communities at the same time. And somebody can teach you how to start a small business. And if you know how to do air conditions, you can start your own air conditioning company, or you can start your own electrician company. It's a lot of different ways to get this money.
Everything goes hand in hand in hand.
Well, we got rumors on the way.
Yes, let's talk about Tory Lanez. We know he's been very successful with his quarantine radio. We'll tell you how they're raising money. And then we'll also tell you about some type of altercation that went down with Tory Lanez involving a couple of women you've heard of.
All right, we'll get into that next. It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.